Hey, good afternoon, everyone. I'm John Hongsmeyer here in North Platte, and it is my honor to serve as your state chairman of our Nextgen Young Agents Committee this year. I also want to welcome our Nextgen members from across the state to our summer 2022 Lunch and Learn webinar. Many thanks to our Diamond and Platinum industry partners for making this webinar possible today. And a special thanks to Skyline, who is one of those partners, for helping participate. So a couple of housekeeping items just before we get things kicked off. During the presentation, you'll be sent 2 questions to answer to verify your presence and attention. You must answer both questions when you receive them in order to receive the 1 CE credit that we've got filed for today. So if you're having any trouble with that, type your answer into the chat box. If you have any questions for the presenters during the program, please also type those in the chat box and we'll answer those at the end. We'll be monitoring the chat and have time to answer questions at the end of the program. So let's go ahead and get things kicked off. As we all know, many communities across the state have seen extensive hail and storm damage this summer and this past winter with the extreme wind conditions we've had, which have kept a lot of our member agencies busy. We hope this webinar will provide you with a fresh perspective as you continue to work through storm-related claims. This course will review the issue of wind and hail damage to property, determining insurance coverage, mitigation requirements, proper application of deductible provisions, and pertinent regulations, and how construction variations can impact risk management and insurance costs. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Aaron and Anthony. We'd like to welcome them as our Diamond partner, Skyline Construction Roofing and Restoration. They're a construction company based in the Lincoln area and serve clients, I believe, all across the state of Nebraska. And they've assured me they can take a look at about anything from regular home stuff to the most complex commercial jobs. So Skyline Construction specializes in those high work and tough jobs. Skyline has been in business for about 40 years now and have honed their skills in on problem solving to provide the best outcomes and to clients. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Aaron and Anthony and kind of pass the mic over to them.
Yeah, thanks for that, John. My name's Aaron Rood. I am the marketing director for Skyline, and I am going to defer most of this over to Anthony now. So take it away, buddy.
Hey, guys. I'm Anthony Thiner, VP of Operations over at Skyline. Little background on Skyline, like you already heard, we've been in business for 40 years. I'm the part of the family, so we're family owned and operated. Been in business for 40 years doing the crazy stuff. That's how my father-in-law, Dave, really made his name for himself. The tall, crazy steeples, the big stuff, the small stuff. And he never really learned how to say no. So we've learned a lot over the years because of that. Going through this, I don't know, I'm sure you guys have maybe heard there's been a few hailstorms over the past couple of weeks. So I was all excited to make this fancy PowerPoint presentation that Rude thought it would be great for me to make, but we didn't quite get through that. But I think I can put you through a few of the apps and technology we use to help show you what hail does to a property, give you guys a good idea. So when your customers do call in, you can give them things to look for, right from the get-go, whether to find out whether it's worth actually filing that claim or not. And then obviously you have good contractors in the area that also can be useful to come inspect prior to filing those claims. So we make sure all the customers are doing what they should and help mitigate those extra claims that maybe aren't needed. So let's jump into this a little bit here. I think the best way to start this today, kind of just showing you guys what happens after a hailstorm, things that you can obviously see right there from the ground, and then we'll show you some damages that we actually come across. So I'm going to attempt to share my screen here and we'll go from there. Sorry here, guys. Too many extra things that pop up that you aren't used to seeing. All righty. So basically, after your storm rolls in, this is the one that decided to roll through Sioux Falls, South Dakota about a month ago. Actually almost got classified as a derecho. That was very interesting because it was wind and hail. So you had both wind and hail damages. Wind is really difficult to adjust for because there's more availability for repairs. The biggest thing is determine the repairability between old and new products and how it can tie together and see if the products are still available. One thing your customers can obviously do, and this is, I'm going to show you some really bad cases, obviously, but look at vehicles. If hail does damage to a vehicle hood, even though vehicles maybe aren't made out of the same steel as they used to, if there is a hail dent on a hood of a car or on a car or a broken windshield, more than likely that hail did damage to your roof. It's a pretty telltale sign. If we go into a storm damage situation and look at a car dealership and you see multiple cars have damage to the hoods, it's more than likely that those surrounding houses or commercial buildings also have hail damage. From the ground, a big one is air conditioning fins. So there's an air conditioner and that's your condensing fin. When hail comes in, it easily bends those fins. In fact, in the repair aspect, you try and comb those out with an HVAC fin, and if you can't, then the coil condenser has to be replaced. But that's something customers can look at from the ground and they'll see. A lot of times vinyl siding will get broken. It looks a lot like this. It'll break in the middle, it'll break on the bottom edge. That's a real easy telltale sign there on your vinyl siding. I'm going to kind of flip through the roof pictures, but up close, something that you may not see and you got to take a little closer look. It won't necessarily break a piece clean, but it will crack the siding just like that picture there. A lot of times you'll have the white vinyl fences. Those will also crack. Put a little hole in it just like that. There's another HVAC showing what it does to the fins if it doesn't have a protective cage. This is a shed in someone's backyard. Those are made out of, this one's made out of vinyl, but there's different fiberglass and steel sheds, usually about that 5-6 foot height. So this one actually is an open panel, so it broke right through the panel. There's another really small hail hit, but on that bottom edge of a vinyl siding, it cracks out just like that. This is actually a window. So around a lot of windows, older wood windows, they get wrapped with aluminum. And when they're wrapped with aluminum, little small hail hits like that can occur. It's really hard to see if you don't have a trained eye, but the larger hailstones will make those impacts and make them real visible. That's a gutter from the ground, about 7 foot off the ground, but that was a large hailstone just recently in Beatrice here, where it bent down the gutter, but that's something you can easily see from the ground also. Another vinyl fence, those post caps on the vinyl fence tend to break real easy. One big thing when after a storm too, you'll see is hail really shreds the trees with the leaves. So if your street looks like that after a hailstorm, that's another thing you can tell your customers that they can look for. Is your street covered in leaves? Did it shred the leaves off the trees? That was Aaron driving through a town after a hailstorm there. That was actually Seward, just for a nice picture of what hail really can do. More leaves. And that's actually another metal shed that you could see from the ground about 2 foot up. That was a hail hit in Beatrice there that dented that metal. A big thing for customers, if they got decks out back, even if they're not stained, you can see on this one, it was probably just water treated every so often, but the decay and the dirt and grime on the deck, it cleans it off. So you can see the little marks of hail. These are all good signs to have customers really give you guys a call. It's worth your time to then send out a contractor to actually get on the roofs and do that further assessment. And why we always talk about roofs is because the roofs are the greatest investment. On most of your hail claims, you'll see roofs usually take 60-70% of that hail claim. Everything else is not quite of that value. So if your roof's damaged, the scope of loss and the value of the loss is usually great enough to make it claim worthy, if that's the word for it. Here's actual paint on siding, so that it'll knock the paint off and chip off just like that. And also, if you're looking at gutters, what they do is they hit from the inside and they basically nipple out like that. So those are some really good things to see from the ground. They can check their window screens. You'll have little cuts and holes in the window screens. That's a metal outside corner post where you can see some dents in it. And then your downspouts have little dents like that also. So that's a few things, guys, that you can see from the ground. Maybe Rude, can you acknowledge you can see this? Make sure I'm flipping through it right.
Yeah, I got you. Yep.
Okay. So this is just a storm guide that we get from one of our suppliers. Something that we could share with you.
I'm not seeing that one. I see the gutter.
That. Okay. So I jumped out of. Here we go. We're learning. How about now?
There we go.
Okay. So this is a storm guide, basically IKO, things you can look from the ground level. This is something you guys could share with your customers. Let's jump back into, actually, let's stop a second, just see if anybody would have any questions just on that real quick that we could answer before we would forget to come back to it. Or Rude, any comments that you could jump in on?
Well, no, I'm learning this too. I'm a little newer in the industry, but I think what you're going to show here is perfect. And I think we can get that made available to send out to everybody on the call today.
All righty. I'm going to go ahead and throw our flyer up here. And this is what we work with our customers, because it seems like after a hailstorm, we go out and meet someone. Some of the biggest questions they do have is, what is the process? And since we're both basically in the same field of answering this question, you guys probably get a lot of the similar questions when they call in. So what's the process? What's next? We always hear, what's next? What's the next step in the process? Do I call in and then I magically get a check in the mail and someone puts my roof on? What's that step-by-step process? So with our customers, we kind of created a flyer we could hand out to them. See if I can shrink this here. And we walked them through kind of just a five-step quick process on what they need to do. We never tell our customers to start by just calling a claim. Hail was bad enough, calling a claim. We try and meet them first and physically show them the damage. With insurance agents that we work with, a lot of times, same type of thing. They're like, hey, you have a contractor? If not, here's a contractor you could call to come out and give you an inspection, show you what kind of damage you have before you go ahead and just file your claim. So that first step to us is always inspection, whether it's a customer from
that flyer's not up yet.
There we go. How about now?
Got it.
Okay. Sorry about that, guys. So the first step we always say is an inspect. From the ground, your visual inspection, inspecting all the items, including personal property, and then getting on the roof and being able to take some pictures and show the customer that damage. The second step we always have our customers do is then at that point in time, go ahead and file a claim. We usually direct them to their insurance agent to file a claim. We do have 800 numbers also that we can give them. But we like to have them work with their agent, remind them who they work with day in and day out that take care of them. After that claim's filed, most cases, which is now changing, you used to always have an adjuster come out and you meet the adjuster on site and try and work with them on showing them the damage. So there's a few things, with meeting the adjuster that I'd just like to point out. You do kind of have I apologize. The few things with the adjusters that seem to kind of be industry hearsay that it's not so good, where your contractor's you're gonna fight with your adjuster. You and your adjuster may not agree. Your adjuster's out to save the insurance company money, things like that. And those are all bad things that get passed along. And the best thing about where the industry has gone is there's basically a nationwide system now called Xactimate. And it's an estimating software that 90% of the insurance companies use. Some insurance companies use similar systems like Symbility and other systems like that. But it's come to the point now where when we're meeting with adjusters or customers are meeting with adjusters, it's never an argument anymore over what the price is on a claim. It's more what is the scope of damages. And what I mean by that is just determining what the loss actually was. Is your roof damaged? Is your gutter damaged? Is there window screens, paint, siding, etc.? Determining what's on that scope of work, and then what needs to be done to actually complete the work. Is it, a window wrap around a window tucks behind the siding, so you have to detach and reset the siding, not just replace the window wrap, but that extra steps in the construction process that needs to be paid. And in the Xactimate system, basically all of these items are outlined in that estimating system, and the pricing is updated monthly. So the best part about that is, once again, we're not arguing about pricing, we're just helping determine the scope of work so the customer can be brought whole again. So that's the biggest thing with meeting with adjusters. Nowadays, everyone's so far behind because we've had so much hail. I know State Farm is doing virtual inspections where they're basically just doing walk-arounds on FaceTime, essentially. And then there's also, sometimes they just can't get out and they want some pictures from a contractor and estimates sent in. So there's many ways to get through that adjustment process nowadays, but for the most part, you're always going to have an adjuster come on site. From there, after that initial adjuster's estimate, scope of loss is determined, then it's just scheduling their project, getting the work done, picking colors, etc. And then from there, we go to the installation and the satisfaction. What we like to do with our customers is just walk them through the process and explain as much of the insurance process to them as possible. Another big question that always seems to come up, that I don't know if you guys field it a lot, but it's something it seems we always are fielding, is what's this replacement cost, or what's the actual cash value? I'm only going to get, they sent me a check for $7,000. Is this going to complete all the work? Having them really understand that process of it is a big part of going through a storm damage restoration. Essentially, you have your replacement cost value, which is the cost to replace all of the storm damage work on the property. You have the famous scary word of deductible, and you have your actual cash value from there. So it's depreciated to its current value. So a roof that's 10 years old and it's a 30-year roof, you're going to get 67% of that roof value up front. So that to make them understand how that's actually working, and then walk them through that process. Another question we get a lot is, well, the insurance company already paid my deductible. They already took it out of the check. That's another big hurdle for us as contractors to explain to them. Yes, they took it out of the check you received, but the payment still comes from you. So when you receive the money from the insurance company and you go to pay your contractor, you also still owe that deductible for that work to be done. That's another huge hurdle we have to climb. The biggest thing too, with out of state contractors, you get a lot of the hearsay of, we'll cover your deductible, or we're going to put a sign in your yard and pay for your deductible. That's another education process that from a contractor's point of view, you guys may receive a lot of calls on, and that's something we could, from the contractor side, we could really use help from the agents on explaining that to the customers. There's a state statute that I can share with you guys also that they've made it a statute now that can't take place. It's considered insurance fraud. So and a lot of times what happens is an invoice will get sent in for the actual replacement cost that was determined, let's say $10,000, and then an invoice will occur to the customer that says sign allowance and for $1,000 and only bill them $9,000. So that's a lot of times where the fraud comes, and just educating the customers that deductible is part of the process. And if a contractor is doing it any other way, that may not be the contractor to hire. It's just if everyone does it the same way, it makes it pretty seamless for all of us. I kind of jumped around a little bit and jumped down to the actual cash value versus replacement cost. But that is one of the largest hurdles we do have in the industry, is just explaining coverages. A lot of times it's really easy for us to just, speak with your agent. They can help explain the policy. We try to explain it the best we can, but we are that evil contractor. So sometimes they don't always want to listen to what we have to say, but that's a big hurdle that we try and climb with them. Take another little break. Anybody have any questions, concerns, thoughts?
If anyone wants, you can speak them, or you can type them in the chat and I can let our presenters know.
Thank you. So if anybody does, to continue on, one of the other things we talked about was mitigation and the homeowner's responsibility to dry in their home after a storm. So one thing I didn't mention in the pictures, and an easy way to see if you would have roof damage after a bad windstorm, shingles blow off, is when you see a leak on your ceiling. So the customer has a leak, calls into you guys, has a leak. The number one thing I think most policies read is it is the customer's responsibility to mitigate their loss. Find a way to dry it in until the adjuster gets out. When you have a bad hailstorm like the one that was in Beatrice with reported 5-inch hail balls, you actually had hail go through sheeting and through the shingles and broke the mat. So that potential for leaking does occur. One thing as contractors that we do is we go ahead and we can dry it in, whether it's using felt, a tarp, or whatever. Having them call a contractor to come out and inspect it, document with pictures, and then dry it in. I got a few pictures that we should be able to show you on that also. So here's a picture. Rude, let me know if you can't see it. But here's a picture in Beatrice where a hailstone actually broke through. You can actually see the top plywood there, and it actually broke through the top edge of the plywood and through the shingle. So that would have leaked the next rainstorm or immediately. So as a homeowner, yeah, the insurance company will cover your losses for interior damage also, but you, as a homeowner, you need to mitigate that the best way you can, dry it in so that it's not just continually leaking, causing mold, etc. And generally, as you guys have probably seen, you can do this with just a nice little tarp. That's just roofing felt, but right underneath there, right in the middle, there was a hole through the decking on this gentleman's house. So we just obviously like to use a little bit of branding. Can you blame us? But we'd go ahead and get that covered up so that water is diverted and doesn't cause additional damage to the interior of their home. I'm going to flip through a few of these roof pictures for you guys so you can see, what hail damage does to a roof and what kind of damage it causes. This is the actual ridge cap, and that's where your sheeting on a hip or a ridge where your sheeting comes together. It's a soft point on the roof, but hail can actually go through and break the mat of the shingles in that case. Here was a little back awning or a little back covered gazebo thing where the hole actually put holes in their canvas on that one, and that would actually fall under personal property for the homeowner. This was in York in the last hailstorm that just hit. I don't know if that was last week now. No, it's been about a week and a half. So that one, there's actually smaller hail there, but it came in a wind wrap tornado, and it was smaller, like golf ball size, but it hit so much. All those real dark black spots you see on there is a hail compression in the shingle. It's actually broke the mat in most places. It's fractured. It's not as bad as the ones we're talking about needing covered, but you can see the quantity of hail that hit that roof. There's a good picture. Yes.
Hey, you might explain, after a hail hit, what starts to happen to the shingle and, over time, the deterioration and things like that.
No, thanks for pointing that out, Rude. So the biggest thing about hail, and when it comes in different sizes, as a contractor and even adjusters meeting them on roofs, it's always nice when you have the larger hail, because we can both look at it. It's obviously damaged, it needs replaced, it's real cut and dry. Where it gets a little tough is on the small hail, and this is where you can really tell over time. It may not have broke the mat right away, but essentially your granulars have gotten impacted and crushed into the mat, and then they start to break loose, as you'll see in your gutters and your downspouts. After a few rainfalls, after a hailstorm, you got a bunch of shingle granulars on your driveway. Another sign for hail. What it's done is it's taken that protective layer of the granulars off of your shingle mat, and that's basically your black asphalt on the bottom. And anything black was sitting in the sun on a hot roof, it continues to wear away and deteriorate, and it expands and contracts, and then it fractures that. And that tiny little speck of 5 granulars missing over time, 3, 4, 5 years later, you begin to see, 1.5 inches and then 2 inches where the granulars have pulled away and been released. And then that mat's exposed, cracks it. So it really has a long-term effect over the lifespan of a shingle. So even though nowadays manufacturers like to get fancy with their warranty definitions, oh, you got a lifetime shingle or limited lifetime, they're still just your basic 30-year shingle that you guys have always had, that essentially they start to depreciate at 15 years. The reason why that actually changed a few years back, where they went from organic shingles that wouldn't dissolve in the landfill, to what we have now, which these shingles are essentially made that they can dissolve in a landfill. So they do have a useful life. And when you lose that protective granular top coat on the shingles, it reduces the lifespan of the roof greatly. You'll see 30-year roofs where they lose their granulars pretty much used up in about 8 years, is what we see after a good quantity of hail, even the smaller. But nowadays, like you guys know, the impact resistant shingles have come out, which start to give customers discounts. They came out with an Impact 3 most recently, and they have the Impact 4 shingle. They are building shingles better to withstand from hail. I will tell you, a 2.5-inch hail ball will still break both shingles. The only thing that it truly does help is that smaller hail. That inch hail is no longer really causing damage to the shingles that's needing to replace them immediately, which is what both manufacturers, contractors, and the insurance world likes to see. But then the large hail that we can't avoid, those act of God, hailstorms, they still are going to damage an impact resistant shingle, and nothing's hail proof. Maybe a rubber tire or some concrete, but really nothing's hail proof. Jumping back to this wind damage, you can see in this exact picture here, it looks like we lost about four rows of shingles there, about halfway up the roof. Wind came through and blew those loose, and the nails are still there, but they blew right through the shingle. Now, something like this, when you have your wind damage, most of the time this reverts back to a repair versus a full replacement, which is really tough for customers to swallow. As far as the shingles, when you patch them in, don't look the same. They don't weather out the same. And it's a really hard situation as a contractor or an insurance company, because you want your customer taken care of, but is that warranted for a full replacement or not? What we're seeing is, when you do have quite a significant loss, we can get full slopes replaced and then just tie them in at the ridge cap. But otherwise, the biggest thing on the repairs for this type of repair would be, when you lift the old shingles, you have to add additional sealant so that they seal together, because the old shingles will lose their seal strips where the new shingles have new fresh seal strips. So you got to seal those together, or essentially a windstorm will continue to happen over and over and over. Every time you get about 70, 80 mile per hour winds, it'll just keep killing them off. So it's just, it's the tough one to swallow. Not all roofs need fully replaced. I'll be a contractor that will clearly state that. It is true. It's just it's a tough in between for both us as contractors and you guys as agents and insurance companies. Once again, here's another one that you can really see. This one's an older roof. It's a 3-tab roof. Granulars have kind of peeled away from the edges of the shingle. You can see it's kind of more worn down, but all of those darker areas on the shingles are hail bruises from the hail. That's another larger, probably 3.5-inch hailstone in Beatrice. It really broke the mat and caused a much wider loss of the granulars. You can see in the middle how a granular will compress in the mat, but once that mat's exposed, you can see those fibers where my arrow is here. Those fibers of the mat, once that fiberglass is exposed, there's really no going back from that. That give it about 2 years in the sun, you're going to have a hole in that shingle. Rudy, you think anything else to show them as far as hail damage would go before we drop switch to maybe some technology that we use nowadays to help determine,
no, I think you've done a good job. I like the explanation on, the deterioration and that. I don't know if you had put together some flat roofing, some of the membrane roofing, what that looks like after a storm hits.
Yes. So I will give you one here that we had just done the other day. And this one, once again, broke the mat. The shingle went right through the plywood. So we did immediately need to dry that spot in. But there's probably a full day's worth of work that we need to go back and tarp that roof to secure it, because then you get damage like this where it's broken through the mat. Since I have it up, or we got to dry those in so it doesn't create leaks, because it's going to take a while to get on jobs like that. But going to the flat roof, here's the flat roof membrane on that job. This is a white PVC here. You can see, how they get dirty, and then you can see all the brighter white spots is where the hail has actually cleaned the membrane to kind of show you where it hit. Now, with a lot of flat roof membranes, so your EPDM, your TPO, your PVCs, even your mod bit built up systems, you'll see a surface compression or a surface hit like this showing you where the hail is, but your membrane doesn't necessarily fracture immediately. PVCs, they won't fracture immediately, but maybe through 2 winter cycles or 1, depending on how bad the hail was. The freeze thaw cycle of our climate here, we're in the northern hemisphere, basically will then cause a spider web and a cracking in the membrane. It's really hard to determine that. What we can do is cut a core and send it into a laboratory, and through a fine microscope they can actually see that. But it's really hard to tell on flat roof membranes. So a big thing that happens with the flat roof membranes, if you have an EPDM rubber roof that's glued on, so that glue, you'll have insulation below it, whether you have a hardboard or you have ISO. When you have a hail compression, it delaminates that glue or that adhesion there. And when that happens, and there's so many, like 26 hits in a 10 by 10 area is kind of the number you look for. When you have about 1.5 inch wide hail compression that's eliminated that adhesion, those roofs will start to move in the wind, and then you no longer have your fastening. So that without that glue adhesion, your roof is basically going to fail, and could fail catastrophically in a windstorm. So that's what really you look for on a fully adhered roof. Also, if your insulation below gets cracked, then the chemicals from the insulation can start to deteriorate the membrane from the backside. So that's some of the stuff you look for on the flat roofs. Another big thing you can look at is the metal coping caps around the outside. There's really a telltale right there, because those are usually 24 gauge steel, or you'll see that as a 042 aluminum. So that's really strong metal. So if you see hits in those, that's a hailstone hitting a turtle vent there. I could show pictures all day, Rudy. It's always fun to show what those do.
There were some really good pictures of the spider webbing from the Holdridge job.
Yes, and the original pictures. Drawing a blank. Christian Homes. Company Cam's a good app, local app. A lot of contractors use 1,800 pictures, Rudy. May take a minute to scan to the back. Definitely a good point, though, to show that spider webbing. But like one thing if you guys would ever run into a situation where before final claim, I don't know if I had it bad enough. I was at the lake for the weekend. There's a couple things, through technology, but then also just inspections where we can document it with pictures. What we try to determine, and another thing I'd like to talk about here for a second too, is we try and determine what the damages all entail, and then try and get a kind of a magnitude of loss. So when you go to a property based on size and current pricing, fairly quick, we can come up with a magnitude of loss where it's 15, a house roof and some gutters and 3 pieces of siding is going to cost them about $15,000. So we can report back with pictures to an agent or insurance company and to the homeowner. It looks, we would think that this claim would be around $15,000, and here's the pictures showing the damage. With that, in turn, that makes it viable whether or not to file a claim, and helps in that process. The other, going back to common questions that we get from customers, my insurance company called with the adjuster had called, and he's going to come out, and he said that I need to get 3 estimates. As a contractor that does 300 to 500 jobs a year in the insurance storm damage restoration business, estimates to us is a pretty dirty word. We tell our customers, you can gladly go get 3 estimates. If you have three contractors that you like and can trust, go ahead and get your 3 estimates. If not, we feel like it's more important for these customers to pick a contractor that they trust, because nowadays contractors are willing to work with the insurance company and work off of the set pricing, where it's not a matter of you got an estimate for $7,000, $8,000, and $9,000. Well, I want to go with the $8,000 customer. What's my cost going to be? Well, your cost is still just $1,000. It's still just your deductible. If you hire the $6,000 contractor estimate, your cost is still $1,000. So it's to us, from the contractor side, it's more important that we're not hiring a contractor that maybe is cutting some corners to get that cheap estimate, or it's not necessarily the most expensive contractor. It's the one that you trust that's willing to work with the insurance company at the pricing that's set. That's just another hurdle that we try and cover with them, just so it doesn't fall back. Well, you recommended this contractor, or you said this out-of-state contractor would do good, or you told me to get 3 estimates. We try and avoid that and put it back in their hands. So who do you guys trust? Here we're getting into some damaged pictures, Rudy, where this is a tar down roof, a hot tar, mop applied. And when the hail hits it, it creates this spider web. I mean, this is obviously over time cracking, but when you get an actual compression, it creates that type of damage there. There you can see this is where 2 membranes were connecting here. Here's your PVC, and this membrane goes up and under shingles. But when a hail fracture hits and it cracks over a couple freeze-thaw cycles, that's what happens on a flat roof membrane. That's the spider web cracking that we were talking about. And you can see how that's occurred in a few places on this roof here. Jumping back, anything else you can think of, Rudy, before we quick jump over to technology real quick for them on ways we can help them determine after a hail loss if it's viable for their customers?
One thing I might jump in, Anthony, I think a couple questions that most agents would have is, you talked about Xactimate updating their pricing monthly. How much does that change month in and month out? And are you projecting to see that continue to rise through the end of the year? And then can you address any supply chain issues you see from a material standpoint, as we progress into storm season?
Yeah, those are 2 wonderful questions. I'm glad you asked them, actually. Xactimate and the pricing is going to continue to rise. It has since COVID, basically. So everyone has their own beliefs and thoughts on that, but essentially the supply has gone down and now they have no reason to bring the price back down. So ever since then, the price has gradually increased. We have another increase coming on shingle and residential end August 1st. We've already had 3 this year as far as materials. And then basically the nice thing about Xactimate, they're notified, they know about these prices and they adjust them accordingly. As far as supply chain issue, I think in Nebraska, we're going to have so many roofs delivered. Deliveries are going to take a while. All the shingles are already on allocation. So pre-year, based on certain markets, certain manufacturers only ship so many trucks to certain locations. So right now, because of where shingles are, the shingles themselves are already on allocation. Right now, anyone putting their roofs on are probably still going to be fine. When we get into September, October, it's going to turn into you only have 3 colors to pick from. Got a letter from GAF the other day where they're only producing 4 colors now. And it's the way it goes. You'll see that in hurricanes where it's just you got to go with that one color because it's the only way that manufacturers can get the amount of shingles out that are needed. Commercially, flat roof materials have been extremely tough now for 2 years. Insulation was really bad where we were told a year and a half out. It's gotten a little better, but we're still 9 months out if we were to place a new order. Membranes are Q4 now to get a TPO membrane. And right now, fasteners are the hardest things to find. The steel for the fasteners for for mechanically attaching your insulation and your membranes are almost impossible to find. But they are doing priority. You know, if a school would blow off or something like that, they are still getting through it. It's just everyone's got to wait. So the key is contractors drying in the facilities. If there is something that's going to leak, getting it dried in as long term as possible while we wait for those materials. But the pricing, I would foresee it still going up since we already got another increase on the board for August 1st. They'll probably sneak in one more in October. But after that, that'd probably be about it for the year for increases. Thanks for those questions, though. I'm going to jump over to Hail Trace real quick, just so you guys can see what that technology we're using is. And see how we use it as contractors. And then maybe you guys can see a value and how it would be something that you guys could use also. So let's see here. So Hail Trace essentially is a company that has now, I believe, 4 meteorologists. It started with 1, but they have 4 full-time meteorologists that what they do is basically track storms. And then after the storms, they create basically location maps. And through Facebook and company cam and different pictures like that, through social media, they're able to determine, along with studying the meteorologist maps, on algorithmic sizes of hail, but then also hail that's actually occurred. So Lincoln got hit with hail on, when was that? About a week ago. And this is the hail map we got from that storm. So as you know, Seward got hit 2 days in a row, but basically they provide a map where different size hail is shown. You can see this, right, Rudy?
Yes.
So basically these yellow areas are 1.25 inch hail, where this orange area here that I'm selecting right now was 1.75 inch on, you can see the date right there on 6/16. This red here, there's a 2-inch hail that occurred there. So different parts of Lincoln, you can kind of generate where it is and what happened. The nice thing about this that we utilize for our customers that maybe just didn't realize they had hail or how bad the hail is, and they're like, well, I'm having this really bad leak. Well, it was 1.5 years later before the leak occurred, and we end up finding there's hail damage up there on the facility. It's nice to be able to go and be able to document through a report when did hail happen. So something like this, I'll go ahead and zoom in and to a house here. I may know someone that lives over here. So you get to this customer's house, you click on this, and you get see if we can get it to pop up here. details. So right here we have a customer. So it's essentially, they'll give you information. If it's in, you can enter it. So it pulls up the house, has a location, you can get history. So maps, that if I hit maps, it tells me potentially in this area, hail hit 416, hit on 412, hit on 12/15 of 2021, was in the area. When we go ahead and type in this customer, we can go ahead and generate an impact report, which essentially gives us a report of all the hail and wind events that have hit that location for the past 10 years. Let me pull that up here, guys. Share. Can you see this hail trace report, Rudy?
No.
Yes or no?
No, I don't see it.
How about now? Okay.
Yes, got it.
So we get an impact report for a property. Where this could be advantageous for you guys as agents is customer calls in and doesn't know if they had hail or not. And it's 2 hours out in western Nebraska. With that being the case, maybe a contractor isn't readily available. Hey, you know what? Let me look into that for you. Skyline, can you run me a report on this location as a favor real quick? It's something like that we could generate a hail impact. Or like we've had a few lunch and learns where we've talked about, when you get a new customer, it'd be nice to know if there's, someone's trying to buy a house or they need new coverage. Does this property have hail damage on it already? Was it taken care of? Was the hail replaced the last time? So when we get into this report, it gives me the most recent hail or most recent severe weather events. So on 6/16, for 5 minutes, there was 1.5 inches hail. Whoops, sorry about that, guys. 5 minutes long, 95 mile per hour wind back on 12/15. Something like this, you can look, when was the last time this location had really bad hail? Well, then I'd kind of look at my impact rating. Well, in 2016 in May, when Lincoln had that bad hail, in that area of this house, there was 5-inch hail for 31 minutes. So that kind of shows you the severity of the hail, and then also different events that have taken place. It really takes the guesswork out of it. I know all the engineers use similar technology. I just met one the other day, and he said, it looks like we had 2.1-inch hail at this location in November of 2020. And then we go out and we determine it was a metal roof, based on the size of what a 2.1-inch hailstone. Is it in line with it? Is this mechanical damage? Is this hail damage? So it makes it really easy for us as contractors and adjusters and engineers and everyone that works through the storm damage process to determine hail. But this is something that we have access to. We pay for year in and year out, where if it's something you guys need help with, Aaron's kind of our point guy, but feel free to reach out and we can see how we could help you guys. Now we finally get close enough to the end where I can quit talking and please someone ask a question, so I feel like I can teach someone something today.
Hey, Anthony. Hey, I got a question here in Omaha. We had that hail a week or so ago, and 2 weeks ago. And I've had a couple clients call. For the most part, we ask our clients to call us first, try to get them connected with local contractors. But we've had a couple of clients that have called and just said, hey, guy showed up, had to sign these documents, and they're going to turn a claim in for us. With those situations, I guess, one, are you guys still seeing that a lot in the area? But then two, any advice that we can give our clients with those? Is there a way to get out of those contracts or things we can do?
Without being a lawyer, and I can't give you legal advice, but I know generally speaking, those contracts are contingency agreements. If the insurance company hasn't been out yet and there isn't a dollar value on those contracts, I'm not gonna lie, we utilize a similar contract, a contingency agreement. It's not like they're gonna hold up in court. They'll try and scare people into it, but those aren't. I've never heard of one holding up in court before. It's really just it's utilized to kind of give that feel in between customer and salesperson or whatever, that hey, we're going to do this work for you, and in return you'll give us the work. But I'm surprised they said they can file the claim for them. You usually need an authorization or a release of claim or assignment of claim, and those are usually only done with public adjusters. And I think they changed the law 2-3 years ago in Nebraska, where in order to do an assignment of claim or an assignment of benefits, that has to be done with a public adjuster. So I think right there they would have a point that would not be able to occur because it has to be with a public adjuster, a licensed public adjuster.
With that, are you seeing more public adjusters in the Lincoln and Omaha area? Is that becoming more and more popular?
One huge public adjuster kind of jumped into Omaha a few years ago. I mean, I've worked with them before. You see them more when the hail is questionable. The hail that's came through now, you're not going to see a lot of public adjusters because the hail is so easily determinable as replacement needed. You're going to see it on commercial claims. Flat roofs are not going to show damage immediately, but as a contractor, I can tell you how it can show damage later or how that's going to occur. You're going to see it because you only see those public adjusters when they're told no. And then they do work on contingency. So when they sign agreements, they'll work for 10, 20, 30%. And, some customers, how they see it as well. If I get money, great. If I don't, I don't. It's only a percentage of what I lost. So I think that you are going to see more public adjusters. You shouldn't see it on the residential end too much, but you'll see it on the commercial end. And laws are constantly changing where contractors don't hold much weight anymore. It does take a public adjuster to get certain things done nowadays, and the laws are written that way. Like I said, 2 years ago, Nebraska changed some stuff there where you had to be a public adjuster to do certain things. So us as contractors, we can only advise. We don't carry much weight when it actually comes to arguing per se what's damage and what's not. Any more questions? At least one more.
We did have one question in the chat.
Okay.
As an insurance company, do we have access to that tracking system? I'm guessing like the hail trace.
Yeah, I'm sure they would sell it to you. It's not something that you can use. A few things you can use for free. If you go to just type in Google NOAA hail reports, that's a good free service out there. They basically list all hail and wind. Airports obviously have pardon me for not knowing what it's called, a barometer, a wind gauge. Essentially, all airports report those heavy winds when they're over 70, 80 miles per hour. But hail, they'll actually note how it was reported, whether it was a sheriff's office or whether it was social media. But there's hail reports on there where you can actually look that up at no cost. The hail trace system, where you actually have all that information, something like that. If an agency office purchased it, you'd probably, for like the state of Nebraska, it'd cost you like $1,500 for the year. If it was a larger company, they would obviously scale that purchase. But yeah, there's a cost involved, but it's what's really nice about it is you can actually type in an address and pull a report on that specific address.
Awesome. Any other questions for the guys? I'd say feel free to type something in if you have a question, or go ahead and chime in. We got a couple minutes here before we finish up.
From our end, I'd love to ask, any of you get agents from our end, is there anything as contractors that we could do differently or better that help you guys out? We're constantly trying to change the game and do things a better way that just makes everything work easier and more streamlined. And if there's anything as contractors, I mean, I'm hoping you don't have any bad stories where it was involved us, but is there anything we can do as contractors that would help you guys out from your end?
I think I'd be curious if anybody else has anything to say, but I think a lot of what you're doing is going about it the right way. And, you know, some of the things you said you're doing as far as explaining estimates, creating the team approach, you know, you're there to work with the insurance carriers and nobody's the enemy. You know, we're there to put everybody back whole. So I think just taking the time to explain those things as a kind of a team approach is everything we ask for. It's just, I think the problems we run into is when things become divisive.
What I always like to say on that is we revert to the experts, right? And when a claim doesn't go a certain way, guess what we do? We go to an expert. An engineer makes his expert opinion on it. So it can be diverted out of our hands and liability can be pushed elsewhere, which is nice. Because sometimes you do get those customers that want you to fight to the bitter end. You just have to tell them, just isn't there, guys. Not this time. Call us the next time.
Awesome. Well, I think we'll go ahead and I think we're about at noon. So we'll kind of wrap things up. Really appreciate you guys coming out and, you know, answering a lot of our questions. And I know I picked up on some things that were very relevant. So really appreciate it. Just want to let everybody know before we close that we are now accepting applications for a second round of the insurance professional scholarships, which are new this year. We awarded our first round earlier this spring, and we'll be doing the second round here coming up as well. The scholarship program was created for IIAN members early in their careers to earn a certificate or professional designation. Applications will be accepted July 1st through the 31st, and winners will be announced on August 15th. So visit the Big I website, which is IIAN.org, to learn more about that. Second housekeeping note is it's not too late to sign up for the IIAN Foundation Golf Tournament on August 18th out at Woodland Hills. That's just right outside of Eagle. Skyline, you guys are going to be there, aren't you?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. No, they do an awesome job. Come out reason enough just to chat with those guys. And last year, I know they hit it off with all the agents and answered questions out on the course and spent the day out there with us. So that's awesome. It's going to be a super fun day. We've got some exciting games. We've got some exciting raffles and different things going on. So it's going to be an awesome afternoon. So I appreciate everybody taking the time to meet today and look forward to seeing you on our next Lunch and Learn later this fall.
Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.